If the people of Kashmir have a certain, they have a certain affinity towards the people of Gaza, towards the people of Lebanon, towards the people of Iran, what is wrong in that? If they want to express solidarity with other Muslims in, other parts of the world where we see atrocities being committed, where we see bloodshed happening, why not? There are very few people in the world, there are very few countries in the world who are siding with Gaza, who are siding with the people of Palestine, who are actually waging, a fight for the people who are being oppressed, and he was doing that. So I'm not here to justify what I've said. I don't need to justify anything to a party that has a member parliament like Sadhya Pragvi, who eulogizes Godse and who was implicated in the Malegaon bomb blast. Jail has become a very powerful sentiment in Jammu and Kashmir because so many of our youngsters in the past 5 years are languishing in jails. Another reason why engineer Rashid Saab won was because of the fact that he had been in jail for the past 5 years, and jail is has become a currency here that's being used. You don't want to take the territory that has been digested and ingested by China, but you talk about taking POK. It's all rhetoric. Arey, these are the terms that we acceded upon. The people who were signing the a contract of accession, were they sleeping? Had they dozed off? Did they not read the fine print? The way all of us were locked up in our homes, it was like we were caged like animals in a zoo. It didn't have our consent. We had this unpopular, infamous governor who consented to, the abrogation of Article 370 when clearly he had absolutely no constitutional authority or mandate to do so. And the manner in which it was done, it was humiliating. It was a collective punishment for all the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I feel that inshallah, if I win, I am going to talk about whatever happened here in 2019 and how it was wrong legally, morally, and how it was done to collectively humiliate and disempower us. This is going to be a completely hung assembly, a fractured mandate where eventually a coalition is going to be cobbled up. Even the Congress and NC is not going to touch the majority marks. I feel that the PDP is going to play a monumental, instrumental key role. It's not easy being a politician in Kashmir, and it's more hard when you're a woman. Men are very patronizing, they tend to infantilize you. Although I'm not even a girl, I'm 37. There are times when you don't feel very comfortable. Galib says कि इश्क आग का दरिया है डूब के जाना है. I think politics here is like आग का दरिया. You eventually end up getting consumed. Clearly a man probably feels that, oh, just because she's in politics, because this girl is on the top of a sunroof, she's smiling, she's laughing, means that I can go up to her and grab her hand. Instead of just jumping to representation, talking about 33% representation, whether that's in an assembly or the parliament, let's gradually ease women into it. Let's talk about participation first. Let's get them in. Let's make them feel that it's a safer space. And I intend to work more with women than men. For Delhi, I'm not Indian enough, and for people here, I'm probably not Kashmiri enough. But what can you say? There are places where you'll see me with a dupatta on my head. There are places where you won't see me with a dupatta on my head. It is a conscious decision that I took of not covering my head. I didn't want to fall into that trap where I allow a man to tell me what I should do or what I shouldn't do. I'm not going to let anybody dictate terms and conditions about what I should or what I should not wear. No man in this world is going to be given the power to dictate what I should or I shouldn't do.
Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview, and our special segment, Coffee on Sunday. I don't have a communal bone in my body, quote unquote. This is what young politician Iltija Mufti says about herself. Yet, when it comes to talking about the Muslims in Kashmir, she compares their situation to the Muslims in Gaza. Equally, she mourns the killing of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah and justifies Kashmiris taking to the streets. Iltija Mufti carries forward her family legacy but does not flag it. For record, Iltija is former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti's daughter. Her grandfather, Mufti Muhammad Sayyid, served as Home Minister of India. I want to come out on my own, is what she says. Young and determined, Iltija does not toe the line. She doesn't speak Kashmiri, and when elders tell her to cover her head, she ignores them. Iltija Mufti the firebrand politician, here with us in this edition of Coffee on Sunday. Welcome to the show, Iltija, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let us begin with your mourning the killing of Hassan Nasrallah and justifying the protests in Kashmir. Do your sympathies lie with him? After all, he was a leader of a terrorist group, and you are seen, as the BJP says, sympathizing and siding with the terrorists.
So yes, of
Okay,
course,
yeah.
I said that people here have the right to, protest against the atrocities in Gaza, and also, the way Nasrullah was assassinated by Israel. We've seen how Israel has unleashed a genocide in Gaza. So that's something that has to be condemned. And if Kashmiris here feel that they want to express solidarity with the people of Gaza, with the people of Lebanon, why not? They're expressing a sense of solidarity. What are they doing? Are they taking up arms in the protests that we had? Did we see anything undemocratic? Did we see it take a violent turn? No, we didn't. First of all, our fundamental rights have been invoked since 2019. Now the government will tell us what we should protest against and what we shouldn't protest for. It's very well within my fundamental right to peacefully protest against what I think is unfair. If the people of Kashmir have a certain they have a certain affinity towards the people of Gaza, towards the people of Lebanon, towards the people of Iran, what is wrong in that? Were any of these protests violent? No, none of these protests were violent. So I said that people here have the right, if they want to express solidarity with other Muslims in other parts of the world where we see atrocities being committed, where we see bloodshed happening, why not? Kashmiris have the right to protest. You can't tell us what to protest for and what not to protest for.
Okay, let me try and put this differently, and let me ask you that do your sympathies lie with him? Because after all, he was a leader of a terrorist group, and
Yeah.
in one sense, and let me quote the BJP, which said, "You are then seen to be siding with the
I am not
terrorists."
going to fall into this trap. I did condole his death because there are very few people in the world, there are very few countries in the world who are siding with Gaza, who are siding with the people of Palestine, who are actually waging, a fight for the people who are being oppressed, and he was doing that. So I'm not here to justify what I've said, what I feel. I said it, and I think BJP took it as a bait. They obviously distorted my word. I mean, I don't need to justify anything to a party that has a member parliament like Sadhya Pragvi, who eulogizes Godse and who was implicated in the Malegaon bomb blast.
Coming back to the atrocities on Muslims in Kashmir, where you said it's similar to Gaza, isn't it kind of communal? And while you yourself said, I don't have a communal bone in
Bone.
my body.
I said that Muslims all across the world are being oppressed. There's an onslaught, whether that's in Gaza or whether that's in Kashmir, and that was falsely equated to me equating, the condition of Muslims here to the ones in Gaza. What I actually said was that whether it's Gaza, whether it's Kashmir, you have Muslims who are being oppressed. When it comes to a place like Gaza, where an overwhelming population is Muslim, that's where I drew the parallel. But in Kashmir, terrorism has hit all of us equally. Terrorism is a lot like COVID, it does not discriminate. So to give it that communal twist is wrong.
What are your views on Azadi? And you seem to believe, and which perhaps is right, that it is the popular sentiment in Kashmir. Given that
Hmm.
Engineer Rashid won on that sentiment, do you
Yeah.
endorse it?
If you look at what the PDP says, the PDP talks about self rule, it talks about economic, political, social globalization, it talks about opening up the borders, it talks about cross cultural contact, it talks about, facilitating commerce between, that side of Kashmir and our part of Kashmir. So, as far as the Azadi sentiment is concerned, after whatever Delhi did in 2019, it obliterated the middle ground, which is not something that the mainstream parties are happy with, because we have been talking about democracy. We occupy the middle ground here. The manner in which the Indian government went around discredited, demonizing, the very mainstream parties who had picked the Indian flag, it's become very difficult. And when I talk about the Azadi sentiment, of course it's still there. It's simmering, it's somewhere, it's bubbling under the surface. So nothing that the PDP says is against the sovereignty of this country. But as far as the Azadi sentiment is concerned, it's very sad. But the Indian government's policies of disempowering and dispossessing the people of Jammu and Kashmir have only exacerbated the Azadi sentiment. And what better way to encapsulate that than in the fact that, an engineer Rashid who espouses this sentiment, he trouncing a former chief minister, trouncing Omar Abdullah by over 3 lakh votes.
Isn't that, in a sense, a vote for terrorism, if I may use the term?
You're simplifying that. You see, jail has become a very powerful sentiment in Jammu and Kashmir because so many of our youngsters in the past 5 years are languishing in jails. The jails in Jammu Kashmir are full to the brim. So, another reason why engineer Rashid Saab won was because of the fact that he had been in jail for the past 5 years, and jail is has become a currency here that's being used. I have to be honest with you. Jail is a sentiment that resonates with the people. So he didn't just win because of the Azadi sentiment. But I do believe that a very big dimension of why he won was the fact that he became the face of an average Kashmiri who's languishing behind bars. Everything from his campaign to his symbols struck a chord with the people.
So you feel it was the jailed leader sentiment which worked more than Azadi?
It was a combination of factors. Listen, he's been somebody who's aggressively espoused the Azadi sentiment as well. A lot of youngsters voted for him, a lot of women voted for him. They came out in droves to vote for him. So I've always said this, a Kashmiri voter's mind is very opaque. I could feel flattered by the fact that when I campaigned, there was a huge crowd of people, women who would be waiting for me for hours on the streets. But what happens to that voter when they go into the booth? What motivates them to cast their vote and for who? It's very tough to put your finger on it. I cannot tell you the exact reason about why people chose him, but clearly something about him, something about what he says resonated with people.
You know, Mr. Narendra Modi said that the non BJP parties talk about Article 370 but not
Yeah.
getting back POK. What is your take?
I mean, we have a muscular, so called muscular 56-inch government that is scared to take the land which was taken by China. You know how our soldiers were, assaulted there. So many of them died about 4 years back when that whole border clash happened. You don't want to take the territory that has been digested and ingested by China. But you talk about taking POK, it's all rhetoric, Kumkum. I think when elections happen, it's fairly common for politicians cutting across all party lines to engage in kind of rhetoric. If this government really had such a big 56-inch chest, then they should take back the land that's been taken by China more than 4 years ago. But that's a place where they don't want to go into. They think it's easier to fool, their vote bank and to say ki, we'll get POK back. But how about you get back the land that was taken by China in the first place?
Why is the abrogation of Article 370 akin to humiliation, like you said? You know, how do you justify two flags in one nation?
I mean, look, your question has two parts. The first part being, how can a country have two constitutions, two flags? Well, let me remind you that when the people of Jammu and Kashmir, when the Union of Jammu and Kashmir acceded to this country, these were the terms that were agreed upon. They agreed upon us having our own residuary powers, our own constitution, our own flag. It's not something that was given to us 5 years ago and then it was snatched by the BJP itself. No, the founders of our constitution knew what we had asked for, and this is something that they had given us that time. Are these are the terms that we acceded upon. The people who were signing the a contract of accession, were they sleeping? Had they dozed off? Did they not read the fine print? As far as the second part of the question is concerned, of course, it was very humiliating. The way all of us were locked up in our homes, it was like we were caged like animals in a zoo. It didn't have our consent. We had this unpopular, infamous governor who consented to, the abrogation of Article 370 when clearly he had absolutely no constitutional authority or mandate to do so. And the manner in which it was done, it was humiliating. It was a collective punishment for all the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and it did not have our consent. And it was humiliating, and it was done just to help the BJP get some kind of traction with its electorate that wants to see Muslims being punished, that wants to see Muslims being dispossessed.
You know, when you talk about the constitutional right, and of course, the constitution did grant that, but going forward decades, sometimes a wrong can be corrected. And the abrogation perhaps may be a step in that direction.
No, I'm sorry, that's your personal opinion. But when you talk about law, feelings cannot be taken into account. You have to see what the law is. We were given our own constitution, flag, residuary powers by the constitution of this country. So you could think something is right. You could think what I'm saying about Gaza is not right. But does that mean you snatch away my fundamental right to talk about it? Does that mean you can snatch away my fundamental right to expression? You can't. But these are constitutional guarantees that were given to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. What you are saying, obviously, is your personal opinion, which you very much are entitled to. But your personal opinion cannot decide the future of my state or the powers it enjoys.
You have emerged as a strong voice against the abrogation. If you were to form a government or be part of a coalition, would restoration of the special status be a precondition?
Whether we are in the government or whether we are out of the government, restoration of Jammu Kashmir's special status, residuary powers, and also the larger resolution of the issue is going to be our priority. It's not just about being in the government. I feel that inshallah, if I win, I am going to talk about whatever happened here in 2019 and how it was wrong legally, morally, and how it was done to collectively humiliate and disempower us. It's not about a question of if we are going to be in the government, whether PDP is in the government or not. Our stand has been we've been very vociferous against the abrogation of Article 370, and we'll continue to raise our voice.
No, that is one part. But when you get into a coalition or agree to support a government,
Yeah,
there is a common minimum program or there are some prerequisites. So, would
sure.
this be the first condition?
I mean, look, Kumkum, that's not that's above my pay grade. That's a question that only Miss Mufti can answer. But in my opinion, restoration of Jammu Kashmir special status should be there at the top of our list if we form the government. But I don't know what's going to happen. It's too early to say.
In the event of a coalition, are there any chances of your party supporting the BJP, or is that completely a no no, come what may?
Absolutely not. I think we learnt our lesson. Once bitten, twice shy, right? So we've learnt our lesson. So there's no question arising of our coalition with the BJP. But as far as the other regional parties here are concerned, I think they might have to. They might not have an option but to go with the BJP because it is going to be a very fractured mandate. So we just have to see how things pan out. But as far as we are concerned, not at all.
Yes, but if the other parties go with the BJP, like you're saying they may have to, where does that leave the PDP?
If other parties here decide to go with the BJP, that's their discretion, and we are not going to have anything to do with it at all. Like I said, we won't even touch them with a barge pole.
And yet, there is a perception, and I'm quoting Omar Abdullah, where he said the PDP is planning to facilitate the return of BJP in Jammu and Kashmir.
Kumkum, you're asking me to take a man who 2 months ago claimed that he couldn't shift a peon or a clerk in this assembly, so he didn't want to fight. And 2 months later, he's not fighting from one constituency but two constituencies. So somebody who's not able to stick to his own stand, I don't need to give him any justifications. I think the NC is feeling a little. They're feeling the heat because the word in the valley is that eventually it is going to be the NC and BJP which is going to form the government. So I guess it's normal for him to be on the defensive and to completely turn this around and accuse us when, in Kashmir, the word is otherwise.
But when you said the PDP will be a kingmaker, it's clear that you're
Yeah.
not contesting to win and, in one sense, conceding defeat. Isn't that bad politics, Iltija?
Not at all, Kumkum. That the mandate here is going to be so fractured. This is going to be a completely hung assembly, a fractured mandate where eventually a coalition is going to be cobbled up. Even the Congress and NC is not going to touch the majority mark. So that leaves the smaller parties and the other parties and what they are going to do. And because PDP has been such a key player, in Jammu and Kashmir, because we broke the hegemony of the misrule and the monumental corruption and the one party rule of the NC, I feel that the PDP is going to play a monumental, instrumental key role.
Isn't that overstating your position when you say the PDP will be a kingmaker?
Not at all. I think when the verdict comes out, you will realize what I'm talking about. Some exit polls have started, the unofficial ones that are even undertaken by agencies here. And if you look at those figures, they are slightly worrying because it shows BJP emerging as the single largest party. So that, I would say, leaves everybody in a twist. We don't know what's going to happen. Although, to be honest, I was hoping that a non BJP secular front would form the government. But right now, everything is up in the air, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But I still feel that PDP is going to play a key role.
What does the high voter turnout indicate?
That people are suffocated, that there's a sense of despair, and they want to express their resentment, their sense of humiliation, and being dispossessed and being humiliated through the power of ballot. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think the huge voter turnout is also an indication of how people here are feeling this sense of despair. They feel despondent, and they feel that because most of their fundamental rights have been taken, the right to vote is something that they still have, and this is something that they exercise. So it's obviously a welcome move.
Coming to your own election and your campaign, what are the challenges you faced and the lessons learned and unlearned, especially as a young woman, particularly in Kashmir?
It's not easy being a politician in Kashmir, and it's more hard when you're a woman. And I have to be very honest with you, Kumkum, I was infantilized quite a lot. I was infantilized, I was talked over. Men are very patronizing. They tend to infantilize you, although I'm not even a girl, I'm 37. So I shouldn't have been treated this way. And then there's also the fact that you're a woman, you're campaigning in crowds. There are times when you don't feel very comfortable, to be honest. And a small incident happened with me last week, which disturbed me quite a lot. I mean, Jammu and Kashmir is like मैंने कहा है ना कि गालिब says कि इश्क आग का दरिया है, डूब के जाना है. I think politics here is like आग का दरिया. You eventually end up getting consumed. It's incredibly hard to be a politician here, and the fact that I'm a woman makes it much harder.
You were mentioning an incident which left a scar.
Yeah. I'm not gonna name the place, but last week when I was campaigning, we did all these road shows, right? So I used to be on the sunroof, and so people come over, they come to the sunroof, and you shake hands. There are women who will come, they'll garland you, they'll hug you, they'll kiss you. And just last week, I think I was campaigning for one of our party candidates, and this boy came. I think he must have been 2021, not more. And he came, and he reached out his hand, and he obviously wanted to shake hands with me. And when I shook his hand, he grabbed my hand and he squeezed it to a point where it felt like he was trying to hurt me. And I couldn't get it because in a crowd of thousands of people, it leaves you dumbstruck, because why would a man just come up to you and squeeze your hand in an inappropriate manner? So I obviously tried to like place him. I saw his face and he smiled, and he was showing other boys probably from his group that, look, I grabbed her. It really disturbed me. It disturbed me to an extent where I was almost on the verge of tears. And what was most disturbing, Kumpum, when I got into the car, the man I was campaigning for, he's obviously in the party, and I told him, I said, listen, I feel uncomfortable. Some man here, he made me feel very uncomfortable, and I thought, he'll comfort me. The person I was campaigning for, and he turns around and he says, no, I don't think if anybody here did anything of that sort. And I looked at him and I said, how will you know? Are you a woman? What upset me was the fact that when a woman talks about being molested or assaulted or being touched inappropriately, people instantly are so dismissive. And that's something that really, really upset me. And having said that, if I am the daughter of a former chief minister, I have an entire battalion of security, and some man feels emboldened enough to do this to me. Imagine an average girl who's trying to get into politics. What happens to her? What sense of security does she have? We have these lofty ideas about empowering women, but the truth is that women are not comfortable canvassing or being in this space because you feel unsafe.
So, Iltija, what does it tell you about the dirty world of politics, and how, as a young and attractive politician, do you intend to handle
Yeah.
these gender issues?
I don't think, Kumkum, it's about being attractive. I know that even if you're a woman who's not attractive, even if you're wearing a burqa, even if you're in a parda, a man who has to molest you, a man who has to assault you, will do it regardless. It has nothing to do with how you look and what you wear. Our religion, Islam, also says that modesty lies in the eyes of a man as well. It's not just a woman who has to be modest. So, somewhere, I think we have to raise our men, we have to condition them to be better human beings. You have to teach them how to respect women. I think somewhere the fault lies in how we are raising our men. Because clearly a man probably feels that, oh, just because she's in politics, because this girl is on the top of a sunroof, she's smiling, she's laughing, means that I can go up to her and grab her hand.
So, politically, how do you intend to handle these gender issues?
That's a tough one. I mean, I want to start by making women feel that it's a safer space to take part in. Let's not get them into like fighting or representation. Let's just talk about participation first. One thing that I noticed throughout my meetings and rallies was that women don't come out. So if you notice my speeches, in most of them, I tell women who come that I'm so grateful you came here. I know how hard it is for you to be here, because most men don't have a very flattering view of their women or their daughters or their wives or their sisters participating in politics. So instead of just jumping to representation, talking about 33% representation, whether that's in an assembly or the parliament, let's gradually ease women into it. Let's talk about participation first. Let's get them in. Let's make them feel that it's a safer space. And I intend to work more with women than men. These are some ideas that I have, but obviously the rest I can do only if and when I win. So there's a huge slip between the cup and the lip.
So, the sense I get is when you mention 33%, is that that's a mere talking point and, in one sense, not important at the moment.
I mean, it is rhetoric, right? Because even when the BJP spoke about 33% reservation, they left it in the cold storage. I would say don't just jump to representation and like blocking those seats. Talk about participation first. Let women start participating. They will fight an election only when when they participate in these meetings, right? So we need to first of all sanitize the environment for women. We need to make sure it's a safer place for them to feel, and only then will they fight an election. I think fighting an election is at the top of the pyramid. Participation is at the bottom. So let's start with the bottom and then let's gradually move to the top.
So, in one sense, when you say you prefer or more comfortable working with women and you would work for and with women, do I get a sense that the men will not have a level playing field and they'll be second to
No,
women
no,
in
no.
your constituency?
No, 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 absolutely not. I have a soft spot for women, but I want to work for women. I want to work for girls. I want to work for youngsters. I want to work for men. I want to work for old people. But I want to have a special emphasis on women as well, Kumkum, because when I traveled across villages, they would come out in droves to meet me because somehow they felt safe with the fact that she's a female candidate. We can go, we can unload our worries, our burden. So it would be wrong to say that I'm just going to focus on women, but I would definitely want them to feel safer. I would want to focus on women, but obviously our young population in Kashmir is very restive. They are unemployed. There's a drug epidemic. So these are also things that I want to look into.
You said women were comfortable talking to you and unburdening, which is a fair point. Does that make your
Yeah.
win, and I'm concluding and jumping that it's going to be a win, easy? Or is the challenge very, very great and you are kind of unsure of what the results will be and whether you would be elected?
Look, Kumkum, it's a very tough contest because let's not forget our MLA here won four times consecutively. It's not a foregone conclusion that I'm going to win, and I don't want to take it for granted. But inshallah, if and when I win, I think people here do have huge expectations from me, and I just hope that I can do justice to those expectations. I still don't know if I'm going to win, but inshallah, if I win, I hope I can fulfill their expectations.
Are you nervous?
Uh, if I lose, I will accept it with grace and humility, but I just don't want to let my grandfather down. Somewhere I feel like Mufti Saab is seeing me, and I just don't want him to feel let down. Uh, I, I, I miss him, and I, I just don't want to let him down. Like he was a huge presence in my life. He was like my father figure. So I miss him, and for me, it's just about not letting him down.
I'm sorry to put you through this, but you said you don't want to fail your grandfather. Why only your grandfather and not your mother?
No, my mother as well. My mother is somebody I fight and argue with a lot. My mother's the typical Indian parent. Even if you get 90%, they'll say, where is the rest of the 10%? Why didn't you get that 10%? So I have that fear. I have that fear of letting her and my grandfather down. But because this was my first election and he wasn't here, I missed him a lot. And it was a thought that was constantly at the back of my mind, that I hope that I make him proud, and that I don't hurt him in any way. And I just really missed him. Yeah.
Let me come
Yeah.
back to your campaigning.
Yeah.
Some of the men would signal that you cover your head, and the
Yeah.
determined young woman that you are, you did not. Take me through that.
Uh, I think when I went into the campaign, I there are places where you will see me with a dupatta on my head. There are places where you won't see me with a dupatta on my head, and it is a conscious decision that I took of not covering my head, because I don't cover the head, in normal life. I didn't want to fall into that trap where I allow a man to tell me what I should do or what I shouldn't do. So there will be times when I'll cover the dupatta, I'll cover my head with the dupatta, because I think it's more of a cultural than a religious thing in Kashmir. When you go into a village, you are more comfortable covering your head because it's a sign of respect to your elders. It's a sign of respect. It's a cultural thing. But I'm not going to let anybody dictate terms and conditions about what I should or what I should not wear. And I'm very clear on that. And I'm not going to be a double faced person, and I'm not going to project myself to be what I'm not. And I will do what I want to. It's my agency. I have full agency and autonomy to decide what I want to wear. So if there are times when I feel like I want to cover my head, I'll cover my head. Other times, like right now, I have a dupatta, I haven't covered my head, I'm not going to cover my head. But no man in this world is going to be given the power to dictate what I should or I shouldn't do. I'm not going to let anybody intimidate me.
You have called yourself or described yourself as Ziddi and Dabang. Dabang is fine, but Ziddi in politics
Yeah.
because you have to take people along. And don't you see
Yeah.
that as, or many would, as a disqualification to your adjusting in this dirty, and I underline the word dirty, male
Yeah.
dominated profession?
Being stubborn, being obstinate, standing for what you think is right, having conviction. Conviction is another perseverance. Obstinate, stubborn, conviction. I think are wonderful things to have in politics. These are wonderful qualities, and I hope that I can stick to what I believe, and I hope I have that conviction. I hope I have that perseverance. Because if you don't fight for what you believe in, then everybody is going to treat you like a pushover here. Politics is a dog eats dog world. It's absolutely ruthless. So if I'm going to be a softie, then there's no place for me, because let's not forget, I am a woman. I am starting at a disadvantage. There are all these stereotypes that will be attributed to me. So being a woman, I think it's even more important for me to be ziddi and to have that conviction. If I don't have it, then who will?
But what about taking people along then? Doesn't that contradict it?
No, absolutely not. You should be able to win people over. You should be able to convince them of what you believe in. You should be the one who changes their opinion. They shouldn't be the ones who change your opinion. So I think I have that ability to take people along, because I feel I'm fairly persuasive.
Yours is a strange situation. Brought up in Delhi, you're not Kashmiri enough. And the center does not see you as Indian enough because, in their perception, you are pro Pakistan. And in fact, you don't even speak or can't speak Kashmiri, and your Hindi, to quote you, is pretty bad.
I've been defamed so much, Kumkum. I understand Kashmiri. I speak broken Kashmiri. And I find it so strange, because you have so many politicians who are older than me who don't speak a word of Kashmiri. For example, Omar Abdullah. He's never spoken Kashmiri. He recently gave his first Kashmiri speech, which was also, he butchered it like I butchered my very famous slogans. But I understand Kashmiri fairly well. But of course, that's the price of conflict you pay, because I was raised and born in Delhi. So that's the price of conflict that I've paid. But you're absolutely right. For Delhi, I'm not Indian enough, and for people here, I'm probably not Kashmiri enough. But what can you say? I don't want to pretend. This is my life story. My life had certain situations, certain circumstances, which made me the person I was. I take the good with the bad. So that the tragedy of being a Kashmiri mainstream politician is that you're not trusted anywhere. You're not trusted here, and when you enter Delhi, you're not trusted trusted there either. So there's a trust deficit no matter where you go. And your whole political career is spent trying to prove yourself and to refute or to bridge that trust deficit.
So, having faced that harsh reality and unfair reality, as I would say, how do you
Yeah.
intend to combat that? How do you intend to negotiate this? What is the balancing act that you can or would do?
Kumkum, there is a lot of generational trauma in Jammu and Kashmir, and I don't have delusions of grandeur. I don't have delusions of being a mass leader. I don't have even delusions of being like adored and loved by millions of Kashmiris. I want to help alleviate their pain. They have these wounds, wounds that are festering. I want to fill those wounds. I want to heal those wounds. I want to bring some kind of positivity. And when I die, if I last in politics here, I hope that security personnel don't have to guard my grave. And I hope that people here respect me and they don't misunderstand me. I don't see myself as a mass leader or as somebody who, people will adore or love or have that adulation. I'm very realistic about my expectations. I just hope that I can work for people and I hope that I can heal them in some way and not have some that duplicity, of saying something when I'm in office and something when I'm out of office. This is me, this is Iltija. I speak broken Kashmiri, I have my flaws. I'm not exactly, the best person. I'm a project, I'm a work in progress, but I want to help people here.
Sentiment well taken. Let me ask you, you come across as someone who's strong and determined. Does your persona defy your name, Iltija, which means request? And you really don't come across as someone who's the or can be the requesting types.
My mother gave me this name and I don't like it at all. I prefer Sana, but my mother's emotion, she's a big emotional blackmailer. So she forced me to take this name and I don't even feel like an Iltija because, like you rightly said, I'm very feisty. I'm over aggressive. But yeah, I think being raised by a single mother, it makes you very feisty, right? I was always very protective towards my mother as a child. So my personality became I became very aggressive. I became very feisty because I felt like I had to protect my mother, especially once she got into politics. Yeah, you're right. Actually, my personality kind of like jars with my name.
You have been keen on carving out an identity distinct from your families. What is it that you bring to the table that your mother and your grandfather could not or did not?
I think there's a lot of things that they did and a lot of things that they couldn't do. For example, my grandfather didn't have time on his side. It took him decades to become the chief minister. And when he eventually became the chief minister, but he just got 3 years, And the second time he became the chief minister, he passed away tragically within 8 months. So in politics, Kumkum, it's more about what your plans are. It's also taqdeer. It's what God has decided for you. So I just hope I get enough time to prove my mettle and to do what I want for people. And I think I'm a blend of Mufti Sahab and my mother. I am emotional, I am rational, I'm realistic, I'm pragmatic. I'm warmer than my mother. My mother is slightly cold. I'm a lot like my grandfather in that sense. My grandfather had friends across, party lines, and he was very warm. So I think there are some things I take from him, and there are some things I take from my mother. And I hope that I can combine the best of the both, and forge my own path ahead. My political trajectory is going to be very different from both of them. So when people start equating me to my mother, I tell them you're being unfair because even though the fruit does not fall far from the tree, we are not cut from the same cloth. She had her own journey. I'll have my own journey.
You know, I also get a sense when you keep hammering the point of carving your own identity, and I'm not being critical at all, but I
Yeah.
also do get a sense that you want to push your lineage under the carpet.
Uh, no, not at all. Not at all. I just feel that yes, I am from this family. And if I hadn't been from this family, maybe you wouldn't have even interviewed me. But I want to move away from just being someone's daughter and granddaughter. In my life, like everything is revolved around the fact that I've been from this family. So when I have finally taken the step into politics and it's been a baptism by fire, I would like to also. I would also like the people to know me for me. I would want them to know what Iltija is like, what my plans are for them. So it's not about brushing aside my family name. I'm extremely proud of the fact that I'm Mufti Saab's granddaughter and my mother's daughter. But you would know as well, Kumkum, right? If your parents were journalists, After a point when it's hammered constantly, your family name, you're like, no, yes, this is my family, but I am my own person, I have my own opinions, I have my own plans. So that's something that I'm very categorical about, that this is my journey and I'm going to do what I want to in this journey. You have to let me make my mistakes, you have to let me learn the hard way.
So, coming back to my earlier question, what do you bring to the table? What are the takeaways from your mother's politics? And what would you not do that she did?
There's nothing that I won't do that she did, but I think I would be very mindful of the fact that in Kashmir, it's very hard balancing issues here. For example, you have to keep talking about 370, you have to talk about special status, you have to talk about the resolution. But there is a girl in a village somewhere in South Kashmir who drops out of school because the road in front of her house is not maximized. She has to fetch water for hours. So she drops out of school. By the time she's 16, she gets pregnant. By the time she's 20, she's a mother to four children, three children. Her life changes forever. I want to change the life of that girl. I think most politicians here, Kumkum, what happens is that you get stuck in the bigger issues as well. So what happens is that you're not able to reach out to people the way you should. Like even right now here, the whole narrative is the binary of 370, not 370. Either you're in the BJP camp where you talk about how the abrogation was the right move, or you're in the regional party camp that talks against the abrogation. I also want to talk about local issues. And Iltija Mufti is going to keep doing politics for decades. But what about that girl who's in that village, who tells me, who complains to me that she has dropped out of school because she has to fetch water for hours in a day? I want to be able to do something for her. I want to change, the lives of people here for the better. I don't just want to talk about the big things. I want to actually bring a change at the microscopic level. Change lives for the better, do something for everybody. What I bring to the table is some amount of hope, some amount of positivity. Even if it's just inspiring five girls, I would be happy. I see that as a big achievement, that I've been able to inspire even five girls.
I get a sense that somewhere your mother, looking at the bigger issues, missed out on all the smaller things that you're talking about. Do you agree?
No, I don't think she missed out, but I think that that's something that I've realized while campaigning, that we just keep harping on the bigger issues. But when you talk about the bigger issues, you forget that there are all these human stories that are happening while we continue our politics. There are women who are not getting an education. There's a boy who is jobless, he's unemployed, and because he's unemployed, he gets into drugs, he becomes an alcohol addict. And because I'm a politician here, I'm only talking about 370. I'm not addressing that issue as well. So for me, it's about having a more holistic kind of like politics. You talk about the bigger issues as well as the local issues. So I hope I can address that as well.
Being brought up by a single parent and your mother listening to the sad Jagjit Singh songs and
Mhm.
usually being in a depressive state of mind. Take me through that, growing up under those circumstances.
Um, I think my mother's life did not pan out the way she expected it to. She got divorced when she was barely 22, and she comes back home and she has two daughters. And Kumkum, you know how our society is. Daughters are not exactly seen as a blessing, So that's like an additional burden. My mom's life did not happen the way she expected it to, and I think she was always a little sullen. She was a little depressed. So I remember watching lots of horror movies, and I remember her listening to Jagjit Singh songs. And it was beautiful later on, because when my grandfather got her into politics, it was like this spark. It was like she was meant for it, and her life, it was her taqdeer. Because how many divorcee Kashmiri women come back home and they get into politics and they become a chief minister, they become an outlier, they become a successful outlier in the male dominated political landscape of Jammu and Kashmir. So I do remember growing up, and I do remember my mother being very upset, very sullen. She would never smile, she would never laugh. So my personality became that I took it upon myself to make her smile, to make her laugh. And so whenever she would come home from a hectic day of campaigning or canvassing, I would try to hold her, I would try to hug her, I would smother her with affection. But she would be very like worked up. So my mom had her own issues. Her life turned out to be something she didn't expect it to, in a lot of ways.
I thought between her and you, it was you and your sister who watched horror movies while she listened to the
No.
sad songs.
Oh no, no, no. My mom, our staple diet of movies was The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby. I mean, all these, like, the 60s, like, vintage horror movies.
We started off with politics, so let me end also with politics. Between the National Conference and the Congress, which is better or worse?
I mean, I would definitely pick the Congress. I see a lot of hope in Rahul Gandhi. I see immense hope. I see immense potential. When I walked with him for Bharat Jodo, I thought he was extremely honest, compassionate. And I think our leaders need to have a lot of compassion. From the India we've witnessed in the past 10 years, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of bigotry. We need a leader who's going to have a tender heart, who's going to empathize with his people, who's going to be compassionate. And I think he has all those qualities.
Do you think the divide between Kashmiri Muslims and Kashmiri Pandits is irreparable, or can and would the wounds ever heal?
A lot has happened, and I feel that as Kashmiri Muslims, when we talk about Kashmiriyat, we should be able to give them that sense of security to be able to come back. Of course, there's a lot of mistrust between both the communities, and I'm confident and I'm sure that with time, the wounds will heal, and I hope they do, because whether it's a Kashmiri Pandit, whether it's a Sikh brethren, I think all of them are an integral part of our composite culture. And I think Kashmir is incomplete without them. And we need to go beyond rhetoric. We need to get them back. And not just get them back, we need to make them feel safe. That's our responsibility, I feel. And I hope with time, it's something that we can do.
I can't help but sign off on a personal note and about your teaching plants is something you grew
Yeah.
up doing. So tell me
Yeah.
about that.
I was fairly dyslexic as a child. I struggled with learning. So I found my refuge in books, and I would start teaching plants because I would never be able to write the C alphabet. I would always write it Teda, like you have the Chanel C, which is inverted. So I basically would teach plants, and that's how I would like try to remember my lessons. So I was dyslexic. I was a very lonely child, and I had imaginary friends. I think that was my defense mechanism. That's how I coped.
Do you still speak to plants?
I don't talk to plants anymore, but I do talk to my cat. I have a cat who I adore. And I tell my mother she's always going to be my first child. So I do have a lot of conversations with her. And if I ever cry, I cry within the walls of my room and I make sure my cat is there because somehow I feel she has this healing presence. So her just being there, even though we don't speak the same language, she has this profound healing presence that kind of like, has a very therapeutic effect on me. So I talk to my cat, not to plants anymore.
Iltija Mufti, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.